Hey folks, today we're going to be talking about another commodity that we trade with PatternCast. And today is all about grain. No, it's all about a specific grain, and that is wheat. Now, wheat is perhaps one of the biggest crops that is grown throughout the world. The two primary growers are the United States and China. And there are two basic types of wheat. There's spring wheat and then there's winter wheat, which really refers to when they are harvested. Wheat really is the thing that feeds the world, or one of the main things that feed the world. I guess the second would be soybeans, and that's also in the grain category. But wheat is one of those really, really interesting things because not only is it a crop that people use to, feed people, but it can also be used as kind of a political weapon because depending on whether there's surges in population growth or there's different weather conditions that are going on or there's economic situations, wheat can actually be used as a tool to influence power, political power, which is very, very interesting. What do you think, man?
Wheat is one of those deals where you have to know a little bit about a lot of moving parts. Because if you look at China and you look at the United States, the other countries that produce wheat, just about every country in the world does produce it, but in terms of the large producers, China and India, Russia, United States, and France, Australia, Canada, Pakistan, Ukraine, and Germany. These are your top producers, top 10 in the world. There are so many different political forces at work here. So many different underpinnings of, for example, if China were to decide to flood the market or withhold their wheat from the world, that's going to have a radical impact on the price of wheat, the wheat futures, and by extension, what you buy at the grocery store. And that's something that you and I have no control over. And we have no real knowledge of the inner workings of China's government or India or Russia or whatever. So that's a very important part for people to think about when they're going to trade wheat futures or other wheat products, which we'll talk about in a moment, because you kind of have to keep your eye on global forces.
I would say that most people don't actually trade wheat as speculators, or compared to a lot of the other commodities, and for the very reasons that you're talking about, because it's so difficult to pin down. Although I suppose some people that are more cognizant of the world stage and the political environment, they might do well. Most people who are trading wheat are the hedgers, the people who are actually in the cash business, the actual farmers or the mill operators, and they trade wheat to hedge their crop or to hedge either buying or selling the crop, and it stabilizes their business. But on the speculative side, I'm sure that there are people that are really way above our pay grade that understand what's, all the machinations that are going on in the world. I certainly don't. I mean, it's just mind-boggling when you think about, global warming and the different climate change conditions, the political environment, populations exploding here or there. And, you have to move all, tons and tons of wheat over here to satisfy that population, et cetera. Countries moving out of third world to second world to first world and consuming it in different ways, different aspects of the way people feel about wheat. There also seems to be this new affliction called gluten intolerance. And I don't know if that is going to be enough to stem the demand for wheat, but there are a lot of people out there, there are a lot of people out there that just simply cannot tolerate wheat-based products.
Well, you were talking about people trading wheat futures and that generally speaking, people use wheat as a hedge or wheat futures as a hedge. And that's true. But
for their cash business.
That's right. That's true. But also there is a retail product that people can purchase and they can put in their portfolios to speculate on wheat, and that would be WEAT. That's an ETF that tracks the price. It directly correlates to wheat futures, and it's WEAT. And if you pull up a chart of WEAT, you will see that it is at a low, an all-time low. As I'm talking to you, while we're having this discussion, the all-time low is $4.98, and it's at about $5.02 right now. And it's down in the last 5-6 years from, say, 25 to 5. So it is, along with wheat prices, retail wheat prices, or wheat futures, this retail wheat product, WEAT, has also been completely devastated. And we're talking right now at what are the all-time lows. So I actually believe as a speculative venture, this is something I'm going to want to put into my portfolio. I don't know about all the forces at work. I don't understand all the stories. I don't know all the political machinations. What I do know is that because I don't know, the only thing I can look at is the chart. And the chart, when you show me something that's down 80, 90% in the time period, and stories which are very conflicting like they are, what seems like a better place for my money? betting that the people who are buying at 25 were smart, or betting the people that are selling at 5 are dumb? My money's going to be with the people selling at 5.
Okay, well, that's assuming then that there's going to be some unfounded demand for wheat, and that maybe the supply condition will change. And I don't know if that's true or not. And maybe wheat is down for other reasons other than just it's a depressed commodity.
But let me ask you a question about fundamental stories. You can search right now. There's an article called States Wheat is Too Wet to Reap. Article begins, heavy rain has delayed the winter wheat harvest for Arkansas farmers, a setback that could mean lower profits this year. The important part about this article I want to get to is the next sentence, though. Rain increases wheat's moisture content, making grains unsafe to bring in. Wheat spoils in storage, said Jason Kelly, extension wheat and feed grains agronomist for the University of Arkansas Systems Agricultural Division.
Well, did you know that this April is the wettest April in recorded history? As a matter of fact, it broke that designation yesterday with the 21st rainy day in April.
So if we believe these things, then would that not indicate on the weather story that the news is out and you want to buy the rumor and sell the news? Well, if the news is out and prices have been hammered and weather's a component, wouldn't you then want to be buying that?
Well, there are two things in that. One is that the spring harvest is the less productive harvest. The winter is the bigger one. So we're coming up to the spring harvest. And now with this influx of rain and wetness, perhaps that will actually create a much smaller harvest than normal.
That's what I'm saying. So I think that in the old, buy the rumor, sell the news. Well, in this case, it would be sell the rumor, buy the news. So if you're selling at 25 on WEAT 6 years ago, well, aren't you more inclined to be a buyer if now the predictions of crappy, weird climate change weather are coming true? That would indicate something to me there. That would be a story I'd want to fade. So the old adage of buying rumors and selling news, in this case, selling rumors and buying news, how do you feel about that with respect to the weather story?
Well, I mean, it seems compelling, but again, there are so many other factors involved that I'm just not I'm not long-term confident on which way wheat prices are going to go.
Okay, well, you mentioned the gluten story as well, and that's could be a worldwide problem. So
and they're really not new phenomenon. People have always had these issues. They've just more or less identified them and understood what they are, because people really are not made for consuming gluten. I mean, our digestive tracts aren't really designed to do that. And it is a real issue. And even for me, I've noticed that when I eat too much bread, I get acid reflux. So I've been buying these gluten-free products, bagels and rolls and things like that. And I can eat those without any kind of acid reflux. So it is a real thing. Well, yeah. And I thought I could eat anything.
And what's interesting about your personal experience is that a lot of people will tell you that the only way to know. In fact, I'd like to read you a quote from a website called Shout Out UK, where there's a person describing their personal battles with IBS. And they quote an expert who says, the only way one can really tell if gluten, wheat, or any food or substance is a significant cause of your health or gut problems is to eliminate it from the diet. Whilst testing can certainly help identify gluten sensitivity, the only way a person will really know if gluten is problematic is by doing the gold standard allergy test, i.e. eliminating the suspect food for 2 to 4 weeks. So that would lend credence, I guess, to the other side of the story, which would be if more and more people are having these IBS and Crohn's disease issues and leaking gut and all that, allergy problems, that if you're saying there's a food additive or a foundational food ingredient that people are having to stop completely to find out if they're allergic, that would be a pressure on the price.
Well, it's either going to be a pressure on the price or scientists are going to figure out a way to make it tolerable. The fact of the matter is that wheat has one of the densest per acre uses or the ability to pull usable product out of it per acre, per ton or whatever the measure is of any crop. Soybean is right up there too, and that's one of the reasons why soybeans has become very popular. But there's another new burgeoning crop that will challenge it because it actually has a higher density of usefulness per acre. And do you know what that is?
Marijuana.
Yes. Cannabis seeds, actually hemp seeds, have per acre more protein, more usable amino acids and carbohydrates and proteins than any of those crops. Yet everybody's been denied this fantastic crop.
So the gluten story, I have to say, this is it is not a brand new phenomenon. It's not that people are just now discovering this and just now talking about it. They've been pushing gluten-free products on the market for 15 years, 20 years or so.
And most people rejected them because, quite frankly, they're just not as good. So, they don't taste as good.
So again, that seems to me to be another one of those sell the rumor, buy the news. So I can see where it could push prices lower, but it also is indicative of something that everyone already knows, and prices have moved lower. I think that when you look at the last 100 years of history, it suggests that maybe the last 10,000 years of history, people are still going to use wheat products. They're not going away. There will be a use for wheat products. I mean, you wouldn't deny that, would you?
No.
Okay. And if someone's got a broker and they're looking for ways, or if whoever your broker is, if you're looking for ways to trade wheat and wheat futures are the way that you want to go, then definitely contact your broker and find out what products they have to offer. For short-term trading, I would only use pattern cast. I would not try to guess this, day trading it just on my own. But looking at the long-term story, it seems like a lot of the things that are kind of baked into the price.
Well, the cool thing about trading wheat futures too is that, or if you're going to trade, I guess, the ETF, but futures offers a great potential for profit. First of all, the margin on it is very low. It's only about $1,300 per contract, although it moves pretty quickly, and per tick it moves about $12.50 per tick.
Right.
So, and the volatility is relatively strong at most times, and I think it fluctuates a bit depending on whether or not you're near harvest season or not.
There's a lot in what you talk about in terms of seasonality. I know you've done a lot of work on seasonality. But I'll admit to you, when I look at this wheat chart, and I'm going to have it up here on the screen and people can look at this, this goes back over the last 50 or 60 years. Man, I'd be hard-pressed to find seasonality in this. In fact, it leads me to a conclusion that wheat prices are driven by things, again, that are a lot of moving parts. And so
yeah, because you can have a bumper crop that just totally throws that seasonality thing right out the window.
Do you think that with weather patterns as they are today, you're the wettest April ever or whatever, do you think that that's something which, again, is indicative of noise? Because you look back, I mean, there were weather patterns in the last 60 years that were aberrant or up, or too much wet, too much dry. Or do you think that that's meaningful?
Oh, I think it's meaningful. I think that we are going through climate change, whether it's man-made or not, who knows. But the swings, the volatility in weather has increased a little bit, and I think that will directly affect the volatility of wheat prices.
Well, let me add something to my comments as I started today talking about what I want to do with my money, and that's buy WEAT. There is a long-term trend line that wheat is on now, and I'm going to put this up on the screen, where the lows have been getting higher, and so the price of wheat is right on that now. But you also have to be clear that the nominal low prices are still another 50% down from here in the last 20 years. So this is not something that I personally would put more than 1% of my money in. And when I say my money, I don't mean the generic. For anybody listening, I'm using me as a euphemism for you. I'm saying, me personally, I'm not going to put more than 1% of my available capital into wheat. I like the story. I also know there's downside potential here. So this is not something that I love so much. I'm pushing chips in. And if you want to get me feeling really excited about wheat on a short-term basis, wait till we get a signal from PatternCast to buy or sell.
That's how I'm going to do it. I mean, I'm looking at prices today. You know that the prices today are the same as they were back in July of 1996.
Oh, you can go back farther than that. Prices today are the same as they were back.
Well, that's only as far back as my chart goes, but I'm sure that
September 1973.
Wow,
it's crazy, yeah.
But for the past decade or two, wheat has been remarkably strong. I mean, way higher.
Feels to me like prices are overdone to the downside. That's a feeling. Yes, I admit it. I'm totally going with a gut feeling here. Mm-hmm. It would seem to me the population of the world is much bigger than it was in 1960, 1970, and inflation's higher. And again, I just feel like intuitively this price on down is a buying opportunity.
Well, just from that analysis and also looking at the volume profile and what other people have, where they feel like value exists in this, it does look like a buying opportunity to me as well. But then I go back and I look at all the things that we've been talking about and all the stuff that is changing in the world. I mean, population is exploding. The amount of of land as population explodes, then you have to find new land in order to plant new crops to support that population. Political tensions are growing. I just don't know.
What is your bottom line on wheat? As a speculative deal, where do you fall on the wheat trade?
I like being a spectator until pattern cast tells me you have a short-term opportunity. And in the meantime, I like looking at it from a global point of view as one of the factors that I might use in analyzing, the political landscape.
I feel the same way as you do on the short-term basis. The long-term story, I'm ready to dip my toe in and put some of my money to work in WEAT. I'll admit that. I think that so much of this, no pun intended, has been baked in. I do not expect a turnaround now. I'm not talking about tomorrow. This could be a year or two down the road. But if you're asking me about quality and you're asking me about compelling stories, I think that this is a story that I think the chart may not be as overdone as it's going to get. There could be more downside ahead, hence my small position size I'm going to take. But I do believe that 5 or 10 years from now, we'll look back at this and say, well, looks like it was definitely a case of sell the rumor, buy the news. Short term, I'm not doing anything until Pattern Cast says it's time for a short term trade.
I am telling Siri to remind me to look at wheat in a year and check and cross-reference it with this podcast.
Fair enough. Hopefully, I will have doubled my money.
So that's our talk on wheat today. I think we both have come to the conclusion that the best way from a short-term perspective is to go with something like Pattern Cast that takes all that decision-making out of your hand and puts it to just pure pattern recognition. But wheat is a compelling and very, very interesting thing to look at, that's for sure.